I want you to meet a woman now who, if you really want to understand trafficking, not from what you read on social media, not from what someone says online, but this is the first-hand account. Fritzi deals with it all day long and all night long, and she has done for many years. And she deals with law enforcement at a local and a national level. And her perspective is not only rare, it's truly valuable. So I hope that you will join me in welcoming her on stage and giving her your full attention.
Hi there. Okay, we are with Shepherd's Watch Foundation. We are an investigative intelligence group, and what we basically do is we work to aid and close the gap in response time for law enforcement, meaning we help them identify victims, predators, and traffickers. But first, before I start, I would like for everybody in this room to give a round of applause for law enforcement that's in this room. They are your front line. These are your heroes. And they deserve it. Thank you. So there's a few things that we do outside of investigations. We do create awareness in our areas. We work with the rural areas, but also the inner city areas. Out in the rural areas, you have a little bit more difficult of time than you do inner city because there's a lack of resources. There's just not that many nonprofits out there doing the work. You've got reduced law enforcement. You have reduced services. So what we're trying to do is build that bridge and find out where those services can be connected together so that we can get support for the rural areas and our law enforcement, because law enforcement's frontline guys. These are the guys that are out there in the street every day coming across traffickers and victims. Many times it's not recognized because of lack of education, but these guys, everyone that I've met, that I've worked with, oh my gosh, they want the education, they want to do the job. I've not seen one yet, and especially in a rural area, that wasn't open and receptive to our help. The other part that we're talking about is legislation. If any of you in here are a politician or running for office, hats off to you guys. Because that's one of the things that we've noticed in dealing with these different communities is that a lot of legislators don't want to touch the topic of trafficking or child trafficking. It's like taboo. They don't even want to talk about it. And that's a problem because there's not a city on the map in Texas right now that's not being affected. If you've got an RV place, if you've got a hotel, if you've got a truck stop, you've got trafficking, my friends. We can skip this because these guys will know what this is. Okay, stats. This is not my favorite topic, by the way, because this changes every single day. Every minute of every day, this changes. It says the average entry is 15 years of age. I'd say that used to be the case. Right now, since we've got an open border, a lot of the girls that we're seeing online are probably about 12, maybe 13. 55% of the survivors reported they attended school during exploitation. That's true. As long as we have 17-year-olds that are considered to be adults, that's going to continue to happen. 17 is a really tricky age, right? If you're 16, you can't consent to being raped, but apparently if you're 17, you can. And I know because I've had those cases where I've had a victim in front of me that's 17, and I'm being told by law enforcement that we have to let her go. We can't continue to pursue this anymore because she's an adult. This child was 17 less than 3 days, and she was in her senior year of high school. And I had my eyes on her, and there was nothing I could do. I talked to the sheriff's office, I talked to the police department, I even talked to adult probation because her trafficker had an 8-year no contact rule with her. That's the situation that we're in, and believe me guys, you don't want your 17-year-olds as victims, and these traffickers know that they can go after the 17-year-olds, they can dress them up to look 14 and deal with that sect that's sick, that has a predilection for youngsters. And guess what? They're of legal age. Those are your children in high school. Stats continued. This does change. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually victimized. We don't think about boys being victimized. It's not a topic that we like to talk about, but it's true. Out there on the internet world, I mean, I pick up my phone all the time when I'm sitting with people giving presentations or somebody that doesn't have the buy-in that it's in their county, in their city. You'd be surprised, especially the ones where it's a city of wealth. They don't think this happens. It's usually a lower socioeconomic issue, right? That's not true. I will pick up my phone and I'll say, okay, well, let's play a game. And I will pull it up and I'm like, within 3 miles, I can find male and female. I can find youngsters. I can find redheads, blondes, brunettes. And now I can find different cultures, nationalities. Just give me what you're looking for and I'll find it. This is startling. 917,771 registered sex offenders. You know, that's really crazy that 53,000 are non-compliant. That means they're out there roaming around and they are reoffending and reoffending and reoffending. Think about that when you are living in counties that are letting these offensives go. Because I can assure you that online solicitation of a child is not a victimless crime. And those guys will reoffend, and they will reoffend, and they will reoffend over and over and over again. The next one that says 450 trafficking victims new in U.S., scratch that. I promise you that that number is far, far, far beyond that right there. The 150,000 new escort ads posted online every day. Well, I'll tell you what, I believe that. Because as soon as they take down one site, I promise you 5 more fly up. So if you go in and you take down a specific online site that targets escorts or sex workers, if you take that down within days, you'll have 3 to replace it. Since we've opened the border, I have seen sites grow en masse, even with some predilections or with looking for certain things, a site that's specifically tailored for that. And the sad part about it is that people can't keep up. You know, you go out there looking for a missing kid and you're looking across 30 different sites in one night. And then you might the next night have to cover another 30. Well, this should be shocking to everybody on the ages, because most of the time that we've thought of trafficking, we focused on, you know, what we thought fit the age group, right? I want you to look at that number, 9 to 17. Look at that right there. That is shocking. Those are children. And what is really sad about this is that by the time they're 23 to 25, in the trafficking world, many of them are considered to be aged out. I had a case in North Texas, and there was a girl that I had tracked down. She's 23 years old. She's living in a $500,000 house that had a stripper pole and a webcam in it. She's on OnlyFans. The reason we caught her is because she was trafficking another girl that she'd plied with ketamine at a rave and taken a bunch of photos of her and put her online on OnlyFans with having group sex with her and her boyfriend. This girl became suicidal. Mother called us. We got involved. We were working with law enforcement to gather information. The girl that was in the house was on 39 different porn sites at the age of 23. She had actually registered her porn star name. That's craziness at 23. She's that much of a pro. And she's living in a $500,000 home. When you think about the kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old, I think what haunts me every night, I think about the children that are here, that are being trafficked, that this is not their country, this is not their culture, and this is not their language, and they have no idea where they're at. They have no idea of how to get assistance and help. We're seeing kids that are Romanian gypsies, right? Romanian gypsies, that's common, right? Not in rural Texas where they can't speak the language and they're being trafficked and they're 14. How did they get by themselves from the border to rural East Texas and they're being trafficked? And you're having to use a translator to find out what they're even saying. They have no idea of how to speak English. They have no idea where they're at. They're lost. And we have this situation popping up in all these cities all across Texas with these children, and they're not all Central American speaking Spanish. We have Armenian children. We have Brazilian children. We have Russian children, Ukrainian children, Romanian children that don't speak this language. They don't know anything about your culture. They don't even know how to get around. They don't have any money, and they're being trafficked, and they have no way out. That is the realization of what people are dealing with. Don't take my word for it. You ask these law enforcement officers what they see every day, things that they can't talk about these kids and where they're coming from, because on these pullover stops, that's what they're seeing. Well, I can tell you right now that this slide, that's all wrong. That's all wrong. That's way underreported. This is actually one of my favorite slides, to be honest. How many of you know what the introduction for the protection of children is, class, put on by DPS? Well, let me tell you something. That's some of the best training out there. It is free. It's put on by DPS. And they will come out and teach your law enforcement officers how to recognize trafficking, how to recognize the victim and a trafficker. It's amazing. It's free. And these classes are filled. And, you know, that's one of the things that Shepherd's Watch has been doing, is going out into the rural cities and saying, hey, you know what? Let's look at getting one of these classes scheduled for your area so that your law enforcement officers can get the training that they need. And they do it, and they want it. In fact, we went up into Hunt County, and their officers not only put this training in on the calendar, they sent their guys to Dallas to immediately get trained. I will tell you right now that they are the most proactive that I've seen so far. I love dealing with these guys. Their CID guys are spot on. You're dealing with officers that are seeing the worst. State troopers are seeing the worst of this all the time because it's going up and down the highway. The other thing that I would say for sure is that this SARS program, don't take that light. This is a really cool program. That is a suspicious activity report, which means that you can call in and you can report suspicious activity. It might be not enough for someone to make an arrest, but it might just be something that you saw that's stuck in your mind that that's just not right. It might be the behavior of the child sitting there. It might be the behavior of the adult sitting there. But you can report that because you don't know if that specific situation is something that's being hunted from Oklahoma or something that's being seen down in Houston up into Louisiana. So the SARS program is very interesting because these guys are talking infusion centers, and they're going, we've got, I think, a total of 80 of them in the United States. So they're talking to one another, and that's awesome because now we're starting to see coalitions pop up and fusion centers start having to work together. Because let me tell you something, if our government's going to let us down by not assisting us in this fight, we have figured out a way to work together. Indicators for the community. People ask me this all the time. They're like, oh, how do we spot trafficking? How do we spot traffickers? I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will say this. If you see something, say something. If you see something that's unusual, then you can absolutely report it. If you're wrong and you're reporting it to law enforcement, okay, you know what, no harm done. But if you're right, you could have saved the life of a child or a young woman that's being held captive. Because a lot of times it goes beyond us. We'll see it, and you know, we were at the human trafficking conference, sitting there on a break, and there was trafficking going on at the bar. Bizarre, right? You've got all these people that are being trained for a 2-day conference. We're sitting at the restaurant, and I just can't shut it off. It's a lens that's in your eye. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at our teammates and saying, hey, there's trafficking going on at the bar. Can you believe that? At the Human Trafficking Conference in Dallas. Yeah, it's that prevalent. And they will do it right out in the open, right in front of your face. But if you're out somewhere and you see something that doesn't seem right, please contact law enforcement and let them know, or contact one of those fusion centers. Oh gosh, parents and educators. Parents, we have a duty to our children. Educators, you have a duty to every child that's in that room. If you see something that is abnormal, you need to be contacting law enforcement. I will tell you that I have seen so many cases of kids going to school with things that are going on their Snapchat or on TikTok or on Instagram, and it doesn't get reported, even by school counselors. Why? Why are we not reporting that we're taking naked selfies of one another and we're sending it out there? There's some very dangerous apps out there, and there's some very dangerous environments for our youngsters, including Fortnite, which is a gaming community, Snapchat. These traffickers are on these sites, guys, and they are grooming and they're trying to recruit your kids. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was house sitting. One of the kids there was 9 years old, and she saw something go across the phone. She picked up and called the parents that were on vacation in Mexico and said, hey, do I have permission to go through this phone? Then she panicked at what she saw on a 9-year-old little boy's phone and called me, and I said, don't take pictures, don't download anything, call law enforcement. 9 years old. There were 3 apps on that phone that traffickers were trying to reach out to this kid. And that was Fortnite, TikTok, and Snapchat. Hospitality industry and traveling industry, oh boy. Well, where do you think all of this trafficking goes down? It's not in a van down by the river. It's in hotels, it's Airbnbs, it's rental homes. And you'd be surprised, you could go to some place like Plano, Texas, and go out to Legacy West and sit at a restaurant, in a hotel, or sit in the lobby, and it's going on right in front of your eyes. So how is it that nobody sees this and they don't report it? I think they're benign to it and they're blind to it. I think that's where we have to start opening our eyes and start reporting it. When you go to some of these casinos, let me tell you something, everybody knows. Everybody's in on it. I get asked that question, well, who knows about this? I'm like, everybody. Your doorman, your concierge, your blackjack dealer, your bartender, your housekeeper, they know what's going on. They see it all the time. But it's not getting reported. Please, please, please report. I can't stress this enough, and I can't tell you how many cases we've had that by the time they get to us to help out law enforcement, it's too late. They've moved out of that hotel. They've moved off that site. It's very, very difficult because I can tell you that they're keeping these women and children in these hotels anywhere between 24 to 72 hours, and they're gone. That's going to be down most of your highways. Houston, by the way, you have a problem. Big one. In your hotels, they're going to move everybody out of there within 72 hours before they know that law enforcement's going to come down and descend upon them. What we see a lot of times is in the rural areas especially, it doesn't get taken seriously because they think, well, that's mostly familiar trafficking out in the rural areas. I beg to differ. No, it's not. We're seeing border kids trafficked through these hotels. The length of stay is 48 hours, and they're moving on to the next site. Next slide. Financial wealth. Boy, oh boy, have we got one here, right? How much money do you think these guys are really making? It is amazing to me that we have the situation that we have with missing children in this state alone, and we're not doing more to track this. We're not doing more to go after the money. We're not going and putting out emergency shelters so law enforcement has a place for these kids to go until help can get there. With as much money as these guys are making in trafficking, you would think that we would have the availability to go seize it and do something about this. But the recordables challenge. Well, most cases go unreported. But let me tell you something about statistics. In order to have a statistic, you have to have a recordable. In order to have a recordable, you're going to have an outcry, an incident report, or an arrest. So if you have a situation where law enforcement has no choice but to let a car go, even though they suspect everybody in that car is being trafficked, and they're being told, well, they're migrants, let them go. We've had that happen. We've had cars pulled over, reported it to DHS, and they were told to let them go. And there were children in the car. No idea whose kids these are. So unfortunately, when it comes to recordables and statistics, if you have a reduced amount of law enforcement out in the rural areas and you don't have support for a place for these kids to go, I promise you it's getting let go. And I've been asked before, hey, what are the statistics for this area? And I'm like, I'd give you that if you quit letting them go. And they're like, ouch. I'm like, well, that was meant to hurt. That's the truth. That's the sad truth about it, is that we have to get our law enforcement the support that they need, we have to give them the education that they need, and we have to have a place for these kids to go. Because you can't take these guys off the street all night long for one kid, because that's what it's going to take. They've got to do arrests, car impounds, kids being taken and processed. It's a major nightmare when you've got a county that might have 4 officers on duty. That's not enough, guys. But we can make a difference, and I will get to that. The online crisis. Here we go. You've heard me mention most of these. Twitter's another one. But garage sale sites. Can you believe that we advertise for children on garage sale sites? Online? On Facebook? Yeah, they do. Right in front of your face. Right across that banner where you say, create a story. We're going to get to that slide in a minute because that's real and I got snapshots of it. But yeah, they're doing it right in front of your face. Sex trafficking in rural Texas. Yeah, you wouldn't think it would be such a problem, right? It is a huge issue. I know that there are communities out there that might have one hotel or maybe no hotel, but you'll have an RV park, and that might be set up for pipeline workers, whatever construction project they have going on out there. And you wouldn't think that that would be an area that you'd have a trafficking problem. Did you know that the cartel goes in there at night and they drop these kids off with money and drugs, and they go knocking on the doors of every RV in that park looking for a buyer? And I asked someone once who was at that RV park, I said, why doesn't anybody call the police? Why doesn't anybody do anything to save these kids? He said, are you kidding? We know all those kids are cartel kids. We're not doing anything about it. This was in West Texas. This is the U.S. soil where we're afraid to even call police when they're dropping off kids at an RV park with drugs and money, where we have that kind of fear injected into us because we're afraid that the cartels are going to find out who reported it. Okay, here we go. So these 2 ads came off of a First Monday Trade Days garage sale site in Canton, Texas. These girls had been up for 20 hours. When, by the time I had seen it, it was Sunday morning, 8:30, having coffee. I looked at it and I immediately got in the car and drove to law enforcement. The thing that had bothered me so much about this particular ad was not that it had been up for 20 hours. It's that the little girl that's on this side with the dirty tennis shoes, her shoes are dirty. Traffickers will, even 17-year-old pimps, will buy $5 flip-flops from the Dollar General because they're not going to send a dirty kid out there in the world of trafficking. That bothered me because I knew that that was a Danger 911 ad. When I took that to DPS and I talked to them about this and showed them that photo, we both had the same conclusion. That little girl was in trouble. So I can tell you that I followed these two girls probably about 72 hours and the ad disappeared. There were 50,000 subscribers to that garage sale, two garage sale sites or two different sites. 50,000 subscribers, and I'm the only one that reported it. And it was on a create story that when you pick up your phone, you can see it scanning across if you have Facebook. This was off of the same number. It was a WhatsApp number. And these are two ads. The girls over here are Venezuelan. This is the same girl that was in the photo with what I would consider more than likely a minor. And this is a ad. This is pulled down off of a different site. And this is the type of jargon that they give you. Barely legal Latina. Nice. Now I followed this girl for a while. The supposed minor, who I suspect is a minor, didn't show back up in the ads with her, but I did follow her for a little bit. And she showed up in places like Fort Worth, Boston, Texas. Actually, she originated, first time I'd ever seen her was out of Splendora, Texas, if you know where Splendora is. But we tracked her all across. She was in Vegas, Salt Lake City. And then she fell off the grid for about 5 months. These are disturbing. And by the way, at any point in time, if any of these pictures or any of this information bothers you, disturbs you, you are welcome to leave. There's no judgment here. This is not an easy topic, guys. And these are kids. And these are kids that are being trafficked and sold for sex. And it makes a lot of people very uneasy. It's not a conversation that people like to engage with you, especially at Thanksgiving. But these little girls, this one right here in the green bathing suit, this is a common tactic that we see with the minors, is they don't put them in lingerie. A lot of times they can't fill out the lingerie. They put them in bathing suits. And a lot of times you'll see one-piece bathing suits in these ads. I assure you that this was a sex ad because the language was so graphic I couldn't put it up here. The other little girl to the bottom, she was in a bra and panties. She was probably anywhere between 12 and 14. And that's to the conclusion of every single law enforcement officer that has seen that photo. Here's two more. Very young. These are recent, by the way. These aren't pictures from 10 years ago. These are very recent photos. In fact, I could probably step off and pull up 5 more, within the next 30 minutes and track minors like this online. This is very sad to me because this little girl over here that's smiling, she's not happy. She's being told to smile for the camera. If you had seen what they said that you could do to this child on this ad, you'd be horrified. One of the things that we did notice about little girl in the turquoise, there is a blow poster on that door. What does that mean? Well, the experts that I've shown this photo to tell me that that's more than likely a cartel kid. It's definitely not a little girl's room. And narco fandom, with the narcotics posters and movies and things like that, that's very common in what you see. And that's a movie that's over 20 years old. So these are very recent photos. Like I said, I couldn't put everything on here, but you can see I'm available for sex for pay. She's for sale. Yeah, I pulled this up. This is Tyler, Texas, right here. Tyler is a hub and a hotbed. It's in East Texas. A lot of times when you go to these different sites, what they'll do is they'll pick like major cities, major hotspot cities. That doesn't mean they don't service the surrounding areas, because they most certainly do. But it means that they'll pull up like Tyler, but that could be, you can cast out a net, and 35 miles from Tyler is where they're going to go out to service to. These are all very, very, very young looking girls. And again, we have bathing suits. That's a very common theme for a lot of the minors. Most people don't know that, but you might even not recognize that when you're looking at Facebook, because you'll scroll by it, and you'll see a little girl that's dressed up in a bathing suit, and you're just not paying attention to the language. And the language is that this child's for sale. I will say that it's hard for me to tell. I can tell you one, obviously, that's not from here, but the other three, it's very difficult to tell you where they're from. One thing that you should understand about searching online and working the streets is that since the border's been open, we've seen an influx of minority children and foreign children in this trade that is just off the charts. It is amazing to me that we don't have more people talking about this, and I keep asking the question, where are the children? Because it's not just Central American children that are being trafficked across that border. It's Romanian gypsies, it's Ukrainian, it's Russian, Korean. We have IMBs, which are illicit massage businesses that are popping up everywhere. Everywhere. You want to know why they're getting away with it? Because law enforcement can't go undercover to get the massage. That's what they're thinking, right? There's nobody that's going to rat them out. And the number of girls that they're trafficking through these massage parlors are of all different ethnicities, but from what I understand, most of them, like in the North Texas area, are Korean and Chinese. So a lot of these different ads, the girls could be any nationality. We know that stash houses might be Romanian gypsies, might be Russians or Ukrainians. People that are working the streets and concentrating on the sex clubs and the trafficking that's coming in and out of there. We've kind of got a system down where we can tell you, oh, you're looking for a Russian or a Romanian girl. Well, I can tell you what club they're probably being shopped out of. That's pretty sad that it's gotten to that point. We pulled up some ads to try to show the connection between the casinos, and this was probably about a month ago. I had a local representative who's very interested in fighting, this fight with us. He asked me about the casinos, and I said, well, I pulled up the ads, and I had one cell of girls that was popping in between Choctaw and Windstar. And they were Armenian, Ukrainian, and Russian. And it was amazing to me that the same ad was popping up with the same casinos in Oklahoma. Here's some more very young girls. Now, the girl in the first picture, I actually had some help from some amazing software development diggers. You know who you are. That particular girl, we found her on a porn site. Now, I do not know if she's of age or not, but she's dressed to look very young. She looks very young, and she's marketed very young. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for investigators to tell you who's an adult and who's not adult a lot of times, because they have this genre of dressing up girls that are already, young looking for their age, and they'll dress them up to look like children. And they'll put them out on these escort sites. But these are all very young. Case scenarios. How many of you guys know where Merkel, Texas is? There's nothing there, is there? No? There's some RV parks. There's a lot of construction workers out in that area. You've got a couple bars, one hotel, one spring grocery store. This was the case that I was talking about, where they were walking around and knocking on the doors. West Texas, El Paso. I'm sure you guys heard of this case where they recovered 70 missing children. Operation Lost Souls. Did you guys hear about that case? It's amazing, right? 70 kids that they recovered out of that sting. Well, they're starting to recognize that East Texas has an issue. They're talking about it on the news channels, finally. It took them forever to get to the party, to be honest with you. They didn't want to recognize the eastern part of the state as being a trafficking nightmare. And again, the problem was resources. The problem again was education. The problem again was having the place for these kids to go to. Well, rural Texas has a sex trafficking problem. I cannot stop saying that, because these are the areas where we don't have recognition, where we don't have representation, and there are very few people out there fighting the fight. As far as I know, there are very few doing investigative intelligence that are actually boots on ground, that are going into the field like we are, that are working with law enforcement. And what we need as a community is we need to work with our rural areas, ensure that they've got the training, the IPC training, which is put on by DPS for those officers, to ensure that they have emergency shelters for these kids so that these officers can get back to doing what they need to be doing, because they're going to have DWIs, they're going to have murders, rapes, all those things that might be happening in that community, and they're pulled off the road to deal with this one case because they don't have enough officers and they have nowhere for this kid to go, so they've got to go hour and a half, 2 hours away to get to a shelter. I want you guys to watch this video. This is Houston. This investigation, and they're having trouble with getting this to come up, this investigation was put on the news, and what this is they talked about the missing children that were lost in Houston, Texas. And they're lost in Houston, Texas by HSI. That is scary to me. Where are the children? When they can't answer that question, we've got a big problem, guys, because we're hearing more and more and more that these kids are going missing and nobody's accounting for them. We've heard that there's 143,000 unaccompanied minors here from the border. Where are they at? Why are they not answering questions of where these kids are going? And we need to be asking those questions to all of our legislators. We need to be asking them, why are you not in front of this asking where are the children? Where have they gone? And how do you lose them? HSI? Homeland... I'm sorry? Homeland Security. So, I will say this. I'm an animal lover. I am. And I can remember when Michael Vick's dogs were the biggest thing on the news, right? Can you imagine if you lost 100 pit bulls of Michael Vick's victims, what we'd be talking about? The nonprofits that would be popping up, the people that would be in pursuit to try to find out where these animals are. If you had 1,000 beagles that were tortured in Fauci's labs, I'm seriously, I mean, we'd be turning over every stone to try to find these dogs. But why are we not looking for these kids? Where are these children? How you guys can help, and every single one of you can, because you have the hand of God on you, is you can work with your local community to ensure that you have nonprofits set up, that you have a coalition where you've got communities talking to one another and working with law enforcement, because a coalition is a very powerful thing. That brings law enforcement together with nonprofits, private investigators. We're all talking, we're all sharing information, and we're working with other coalitions and task force. And you have them in Texas. Now they're starting to work and talk together because we're overrun and we need assistance. And the greatest thing that I've seen through the coalitions is that the communities are standing strong. When they realize that they've got a problem, they're coming together and they're forming and they're talking and they're working together. And you and your community, you can ensure that that's happening. And if you've got one here, get active in it. Find out what's going on. Also, find out what your legislators are doing. Are they attacking this problem? Are they talking about this problem? Is there any funding that's going to resolve this problem? What an emergency shelter will establish for your area is that it will give a place for these law enforcement officers to drop these kids off so that they are properly processed. Who in here knows what a SANE nurse is? Okay. That's a sexual assault nurse examiner. They're very, very important. We need them. And they're critical when it comes to working with trafficked kids, because they're going to get the forensic interview that's going to be monumental in making these cases in court. We have had the wonderful, wonderful godsend of working with a university who is funding training for SANE nurses to go out into the rural areas. They're going to be putting together RV type buses that will go out and be on spot, so they'll go to the safe houses, so that the safe houses are not having to transport the kids to the hospital, which is great, because guess what? That's 90% of the time how we lose them on transport. They also are going to be looking at a telehealth program where the SANE nurses are actually going to be working with other medical professionals to do that SANE nurse exam over Zoom. That's amazing, guys. That opens up the door for more cases to be made, kids to be seen, predators to be identified. So please, please, please pray for all these kids that are out there. Ask everybody the question, where are the children? Hashtag it, ask everybody the question, make them start giving you answers, and work with your local communities so that together we can make a difference, because right now it's us. Nobody's coming to save us, guys. We got to do this ourselves.